We continue with the second cycle of dialogue between Job and his friends, Job 12 through 20. And one of the critical issues here is, does Job take any comfort in a situation by faith in an afterlife? Second cycle, Job responds that he believes his accusers are full of hot air. He says wisdom will die with you, which is full of sarcasm. And he thinks they're just windbags. Job would like to argue with God. He makes the statement, that God alone has wisdom. To God belongs wisdom and power and counsel and understanding are his. But he wishes that he could argue with God over the justice of what's happened to him. I desire to speak to the Almighty and to argue my case with God. And even though God may strike him dead for it, he hopes that he could win an argument with God. Though he slay me, yet I will hope in him. I will surely defend my ways to his face. Again, Job believes God has been unfair in punishing him for non-existent sins. Then he makes this little reflection on death and afterlife in Job chapter 14. He thinks humans are too insignificant to deserve the divine surveillance that humans receive. Do you fix your eye on such a one? Will you bring him before you for judgment? So look away from him and let him alone till he has put in his time like a hired man. Just leave humans alone, and don't be looking for some reason to go out of your way to punish him, God. And then he talks about death. That unlike trees, if you cut down men, they do not rise again. At the least, there is hope for a tree, Job says. If you cut it down, it will sprout again, and new roots will not fail. Its roots may grow old in the ground, and its stump die in the soil, yet at the scent of water it will bud and put forth shoots like a plant. And perhaps you've had that experience where you've cut down a tree and you thought it was dead, but then it grows up again from the roots. But a man dies and is laid low, and he breathes less and is no more. As water disappears from the sea, or a riverbed becomes parched and dry, so man lies down and does not rise till heavens are no more. Men will not awake or be aroused from their sleep. Man has not the same hope that even a cut-down tree has. Now, in Job 14, verses 14 and 15, the question arises, does he here affirm an afterlife? Well, the NIV translation seems to think yes. In his musings, Job goes on to say, if a man dies, will he live again? All the days of my hard service I will wait for my renewal to come. You will call, and I will answer you, and you will long for the creature your hands have made. That seems to say, yes, there is a hope of afterlife, that at some point God will call Job from the grave, and Job will answer in the resurrection. But the New Revised Standard Version translation believes that the answer is not really. It renders the key line in verse 15 differently. If mortals die, will they live again? All the days of my service, I would wait until my release should come. You would call, and I would answer you. You would long for the work of your hands. Now this goes back to a ambiguity in Hebrew, the imperfect form as it's called, in which the Hebrew imperfect can either be translated as a simple future, you will call and I will answer, or it could have a modal meaning, expressing a wish or a possibility. You would call and I would answer you. Now, which of both of these are defendable translations of the Hebrew then? Which best fits the context? Well, I would suggest that the tree analogy that has just come before in verses 7 through 12 suggests that he is not affirming an afterlife. That is, he says that unlike a tree, which might be killed by being cut down, but then rise again from the roots, man has no such hope. Verse 19 suggests that this is kind of a whimsical pipe dream rather than what Job expects. As water wears away stones and torrents wash away the soil, so you destroy man's hope. So his hope is that you would call and I would answer you, and you would long for the work of your hands even after I die. But that's just a pipe dream, and you destroy that hope. So I believe he does not affirm an afterlife here. And the New Revised Standard Version is probably the correct rendering at this point. Well, the second cycle continues. Eliphaz responds, accuses Job of arrogance towards God and man meaning especially himself, and accuses him again of sinning. He says, your sin prompts your mouth. You adopt the tongue of the crafty. And he takes offense. Are you the first man ever born? Were you brought forth before the hills? Do you limit wisdom to yourself? What insights do you have that we do not have? The gray-haired and the aged are on our side, men even older than your father. So we're as wise as you are, Job, is basically Eliphaz's point. Job accuses Eliphaz of being a sorry comforter. I have heard many things like these, miserable comforters, you all. And he is, of course, right in that. Job actually accuses God of using him for target practice. He says in chapter 16, his, meaning God's archers, surround me. Without pity, he pierces my kidneys and splits my gall on the ground. Job laments his situation and longs for death. My only home I hope for is the grave, 17:13. Again, Bildad is insulted. Why are we, meaning Job's friends, especially Bildad, regarded as cattle and considered as stupid in your sight? But then he rants on for the rest of the chapter on how wicked Job and how the wicked, like Job, must suffer. The lamp of the wicked is snuffed out. The flame of his fire stops burning. Job responds in chapter 19. Again, he complains about his comforters. How long will you torment me and crush me with your words? 10 times you have reproached me. Shamelessly you attack me. But then he believes that God has wronged him and persecutes him by punishing him for sins he hasn't committed. 19 and verse 6, I know that God has wronged me. 19 and verse 22, why do you persecute me as God does? Now a bit of comment on Job's response. Now Bildad denied that God perverts justice. But Job in chapter 9 affirms that God has perverted justice. And the question is, well, who is right? And the answer is neither one, really. Bildad is wrong to say Job suffers because of his sins. Job is wrong to say that God has wronged him. Later, the fourth friend, Elihu, is going to rightly call Job to task for this claim. Now, in chapter 19, there is again a passage that might suggest that Job believes in an afterlife, where he says this, chapter 19, verse 23, "Oh, that my words were recorded, that they were written in a scroll," which, by the way, he got his wish. It got recorded in the scrolls of the Bible. "And that they were inscribed on an iron tool on lead," type print would have done that, "or engraved in rock forever. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. After my skin has been destroyed, yet in," or literally from, "my flesh, I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes and not another. Oh, how my heart yearns within me. If you say, how will we hound him? Since the root of trouble lies in him, you should fear the sword yourselves, for wrath will bring punishment by the sword, and then you will know that there is a judgment." Now, in this line that's in bold, "I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet from my flesh I will see God." Does that affirm an afterlife? And there's different views on this. Again, this is kind of a crux of interpretation. One view is that it gives a hope of resurrection, that after his flesh has been destroyed, that is, he's going to die, his Redeemer, that would be God from a Christian view, Christ, will give him a new body, and in the resurrection he will see God. The problem with that is that Job has already affirmed that he doesn't believe in a resurrection. "Man lies down, does not rise, till the heavens be no more. He will not awaken or be aroused from his sleep." Back in chapter 14 and verse 12. Well, second view is perhaps he'll see God as a bodily spirit, bodiless spirit. This view would take verse 26 to mean, "Yet from my flesh," meaning apart from my flesh, "I shall see God," a possible meaning, a preposition mean in Hebrew. So perhaps though his body will rot in death, his disembodied spirit will see God. But the problem with this is that Job nowhere else finds any kind of hope or comfort in a doctrine of the afterlife, even where it would fit his argument well. The third view is that it talks about vindication in this life. And this is the view I think is most likely. If you take this view, you would translate it this way: "Even after my skin has been destroyed," that is, right now, his boil-covered body, which is in such horrible shape, scraping the pus from his skin with broken pottery, "even after my skin has been destroyed, yet from my flesh," even now, that is, while I'm still alive in the flesh, "I wish to see God." Again, the Hebrew can be translated that way. It's a wish that from his weak and emaciated flesh, covered with boils, that he could see God and acquit himself before him. Now, vindication in this life best fits the context. Nowhere else does Job affirm any belief in the afterlife. Job often expresses hope of vindication in this life. And vindication in this life is exactly what happens in the end of the book. Job does see God, and his friends are punished as he warns that they might be. Now, does that mean that the book of Job denies the afterlife? Well, Job and his friends are wrong about a lot of things. And Job is wrong about the idea of an afterlife in this particular case. This is why this book is a little different than some books. You can't accept every word from either Job or his friends as being literally true.